Welcome to Crossing in the Woods, to another CoH2 cast. This time it's gonna be Angry German playing against Don Pippon. Wehrmacht against USF 1v1. Crossing in the Woods. Pretty open map, pretty big for a 1v1, pretty small for a 2v2, but of course this is 1v1. 2 fuel points on either side at the opposite ends of the map. 3 strategic points in the middle of the river, and D2 munitions points. Fairly contestable as well in the center. Let's see what they do. We have a tier 0 start out of Angry German. We're gonna have mechanized assault selected, and we're gonna have MG42 and a pioneer squad being queued up. So what I think he wants to do is use his first pioneer squad to cap around the map to support his MG42, and then use the second pioneer squad, which will come on the field, to build his tier 1. On the opposite end, we have a completely orthodox start out of the Americans. 2 riflemen being built. No surprises there. So it looks like the MG42 is attempting to cap on the opposite end of the map as opposed to the Pioneers, which is in my opinion a mistake, because you want those 2 units up and about supporting each other. Because right now, if they get caught out of position, like this MG is about to get caught out of position if the riflemen are able to flank through this opening in the woods, then that would be pretty bad for both of them. So it looks like he's gonna go for the shack, and it might actually work out, as he's going to catch out this rifleman squad. He perhaps will be able to suppress them in red cover, and the other rifleman squad is approaching from the arc of fire as well, so they will be both suppressed. So that is an excellent move for the Germans, even if it was a very risky one. It does work out, so he's going to be able to inflict major casualties on the riflemen, whereas the rear echelons are being engaged by some pioneers. We do have some assault grenadiers being purchased and are on the field, and yep, as I expected, the pioneers did build tier 1, so at the same time the assault grenadiers are able to repel the riflemen who were unsuppressed at the current moment. So, and the pioneers managed to actually wipe the rear echelon because of some very bad unit preservation. So a really good start for the Germans, and we're gonna have some more assault grenadiers being called in. I don't agree with more than one assault grenadier on this map because it's a very open map. You'd want to have more long-range units than that. The second assault grenadier is kind of not warranted, but the first one is being supported by the MG42, so it will likely be okay. Again, I would have gone for a grenadier squad, or perhaps even a sniper, because the Americans always have a lot of trouble with snipers, and at this point in the game, a sniper wouldn't sacrifice too much map control because of the fact that, well, the first engagement went just so well for him, so perhaps a sniper would have been a way better choice against the Americans at this point. We do have infantry company being selected. This will allow him to build defensive structures such as sandbags and mines. We'll see how you can make use of that. Of course, when you're back into your base, mines and sandbags aren't too useful. We might see the mortar half-track, but I doubt it. But we most likely will be seeing lots of M1919 like machine guns, so that will be really good. We do have grenade tech being chosen, and a grenade will be tossed at one of the assault grenadiers, completely wiping the squad on retreat. Excellent grenade for the Americans. A bit of a micro hiccup, let's call it that, from Angry German. Should have been noticing the huge rifle swarm that was approaching. We have another assault grenadier being purchased, which is, again, in my opinion, a mistake. At this point, really, more assault grenadiers is not what you need. You might need an extra MG to deal with the riflemen, or you might need an extra grenadier, or actually a grenadier, for some extra long-range support. Getting some of these units would have helped them out very greatly. So we do have the tier 1 being upgraded, Battle Phase 1. So we might see a tier 2 coming on the field soon. A scout car, well, not a flame half-track, not on this map, and against this kind of composition, but a 2-2 scout car would be very useful for him, just to put the pressure up and continue to advance and push the enemy into the base once again. We have another grenade being tossed on these assault grenadiers. The American riflemen were able to capture the cutoff point for the left fuel point, so that was an excellent maneuver. Definitely will stop the German fuel income for a while, just giving the Americans a bit of a reprieve, because right now they don't control either of the fuel points, and one rifleman squad is attempting to secure this left side fuel point, so that would be really good if they manage to do that. We do have the mortar half-track being selected. The reason for that is, I'm guessing, to deal with these MGs, well, this one MG, so it might just be useful because of that. But again, the mortar half-track that the Americans get is a very expensive unit, 40 fuel and 200 manpower, and it is a very short range unit. This is the maximum range actually that it's shooting at, so just know that it's a very, very short range unit. So not too useful of an artillery piece. Rear echelons on the left side are going to be handed over to Cap, whereas the riflemen will push up to try and deal with these pioneers that are rather capturing the points. The MG42 is worth noting. He is Bed 1, so he can use the fire incendiary armor-piercing rounds against the mortar half-track. Again, of course, because of the low range, it is actually kind of feasible to do that, but he will not. Don Pepin will notice that that was happening and retreat his mortar half-track. At the left side, the pioneers were, in fact, forced away by the riflemen, and some of the riflemen are able to recapture the cutoff point on the road right outside the base, so that is good for the Americans. Now, we don't really see any of the tech because he wasted 40 of his fuel on the mortar half-track. So again, some early vehicles from the Germans, like some T2 Scott cars, would be excellent. A grenade will almost wipe out the assault grenadiers, but the assault grenadiers are also making a number on these riflemen, leaving them with only one man left. They will have to cross some negative cover to reach these rear echelons, but I doubt the rear echelons will be able to inflict too many casualties on them before they get close, and once they get close, the assault grenadiers will definitely be able to beat the rear echelons. Well, I say definitely, but oh yeah, definitely. Again, the second Pioneer squad should actually be probably upgraded with a minesweeper. He doesn't know of. Oh, actually, he does know that it's infantry company because of the mortar half-track, so he should be expecting riflemen mines being positioned around the map. And Dom Pepin should actually be upgrading his riflemen with LMGs. He does have enough munitions for almost 2 LMGs, so that would be really, really good for him. Will help him out greatly in these infantry engagements. We have a Grenadier squad being purchased. Again, since Angry German at this point knows that 40 of the fuel of the Americans was wasted on a mortar half-track, the fact that he is not getting any AT is actually kind of justified, because why would you get AT when the Americans aren't even close to be able to get a vehicle? So you can just focus on the anti-infantry and box the enemy in the base. We do have 2 LMGs being purchased, and also an ambulance. Now the ambulance will be useful in restraining the manpower bleed that the Americans are always so fond of. But again, if I was Dom Pepin, I would go for the captain as soon as possible, because at this point, if a German vehicle of any kind shows up, he would be in very big trouble. And again, we do have the assault grenadiers, so he knows that it's a mechanized assault, and the Stug E might be an option for the Germans. Also, the mechanized assault group, if it was actually called in, would actually have been a really, really nice tool, because at this point, two of the riflemen squads do have anti-tank rifle grenades available with their Bed 1, but at the same time, still, the mechanized assault group would have provided excellent protection for a Panzer Grenadier squad to just harass on both ends of the map. So the LMG upgraded riflemen with the 1919s will be easily able to defeat these grenadiers who are unupgraded and unvetted, even at long range. And the extra firepower of the both of the LMGs will be easily able to repel any kind of assault grenadier pushes that the Germans make. So the tide might be swinging a bit to the Germans. If they cannot get a vehicle out soon, they might just lose their infantry superiority. So the mortar half-track still hasn't done anything. Again, it's a pretty useless unit, so it doesn't really surprise me. We have a double-pronged assault from the assault grenadiers. The right prong of the assault will be easily defeated by the M1919s, and the left prong will be left alone against the 2 LMG'd up squads. One of these squads, though, will take some heavy casualties, might even get wiped. Will probably not get wiped, but again, through the red cover, it might have been possible if the retreat had been later. And the one squad stays alive. King of the Hill will be able to capture the right VP. VP situation is completely in favor of the Germans. We do have 500 VPs to 370, so definitely the early map control that the early engagement wins afforded Angry German definitely coming into play. Excellent mine placement. Really noticing that he had a bit of a munitions float and just planting the Teller mine right in the center of the road to ward off any kind of American armored push. Later on, we have 2 riflemen being built by Dom Pippon. I completely disagree. The 3 riflemen he already had were already doing fairly well for themselves. We do have the flamethrower being popped and also the Grenadier, Pioneer squad being wiped by these riflemen. Again, he's building his captain, so he would make use of his manpower float a bit better by getting a 57mm anti-tank gun or perhaps even a pack howitzer, rather than getting 2 more riflemen. Maybe 1 more rifleman squad would have been okay, but 2 more is just overkill. He's gonna take pretty heavy manpower bleed because of the 6 infantry units that he will have, plus the rear echelons, which are kind of an infantry unit anyway. And he's gonna be lacking in AT because these 2 squads don't even have anti-tank rifle grenades. And of course, just more riflemen won't really help against any kind of vehicles. He does have the captain for the 2 bazookas, but again, if the Germans were to take up to support armor corps like this, and possibly even get an Ostwind would actually be an excellent choice right now. So I'm not sure he would go for it because it's kind of an unpopular unit, but it would be an excellent choice. We do have a mortar being purchased. Now, I completely disagree. We do have the Ostwind actually in the production queue, so that is really, really nice to see, because the Ostwind will be able to bleed the riflemen very heavily and will not be too scared to fight the captain as well. And any kind of American light vehicles are also kind of vulnerable to the Ostwind. The Stuart does win in a 1v1 fight, but it doesn't win convincingly enough to kill it. And with the support of a pack, that Ostwind can definitely last a long while for the Germans. But we actually do not have the Tier 2, the Leicht Mechanized Company, being upgraded, which is a very big mistake in my opinion from Angry German, because the Leicht Mechanized Company, even if you don't use the 222 or the half-track or the Panzergrenadiers, is just vital because of the pack. The pack is a unit that you cannot do without, as well. An AT gun as any faction is not a unit that you can do without, especially if the game drags on, but especially the pack, because it is the best AT gun in the game. So this is a very big mistake out of Angry German, and will probably cost them later if the Americans can get any kind of, perhaps even Jacksons out. So the captain is going to the watchtower, the sniper nest, really a bit of a blunder, because these sniper nests go down really, really quickly, bringing down the entire squads of them. And also the fact that there's only 1 window to fire. It looks like both bazookas are actually firing anyway. So the grenade assault will go down. As you can see, that the fact that that squad was bunched up that way was really, really bad, and the captain was almost wiped. And if the Ostwind had chased, it would have been definitely wiped. We have an S minefield on the left field point. Excellent choice from Angry German to just prevent some harassment. But it looks like he wasn't fully completed. It's not very dense, and so only a small patch of mines goes off and slightly damages the rifleman squad, dealing only 1 casualty. So on the right hand side, we do have some riflemen being able to recapture the drill point, just securing some fuel income for the Americans, but a mortar and some assault grenadiers are attempting to retake it. On the left side, the riflemen are going to do some fighting against some grenadiers, and the Ostwind is being committed on the right side, which will definitely afford the control of the right side to the Germans. Both of the rifleman squads wisely retreating. We have the AT gun being purchased, and again, if there hadn't been that extra rifleman squad purchased, perhaps this would have been an AT gun and a pack howitzer, or perhaps 2 AT guns. So, really, all the better for the Germans that are having to face 1 more useless rifleman squad. Though the extra rifleman might be useful for capturing and harassing. A grenade is going to go on the Grenadiers, but the Grenadiers wisely route the infantry out of the way fairly quickly, and they will be able to escape pretty much unscathed. The Ostend is moving in, pretty much acting as a fireman, going to where the enemy is strongest and trying to rectify the situations. An extra assault grenadier is being purchased now. That's really a bad idea, because at this point in the game, the assault grenadiers, even on a map that kind of favors them, would not be too great, because the assault grenadiers are more of an early game unit. They don't really scale too well with veterancy, because their MP40s are kind of dinky-winky guns. They don't really deal all that much damage except for very short range. And their main advantage in the early game is the fact that they are 5 guys and they are close range, so when there aren't very many vetted enemies that can gun them down before they get to close range, they do very well. But once these LMG riflemen start to get veterancy, especially that veterancy 2 and veterancy 3, they start to become pretty much impossible to deal with. The MG42, now, it was used very well in the early game. It did a very big number on the Americans in the first few minutes, but at this point it's being used too defensively. It should be brought up with the assault grenadiers in pushes so that it can support the German infantry, but it's being used defensively instead, which too defensively actually, because defensively is no problem, but too defensively, yes, that is a problem. Actually, it seems like one of the rifleman squads, the vetted ones, with LMGs, did go down from a mortar round, perhaps? It does look like the mortar does have 3 kills, so... And this definitely looks like a mortar crater where the riflemen are dying, so... Very good for the mortar, starting to pay it for itself a little bit. Even though it was a weird choice to get the mortar so late against so many mobile units, because it's not like the Americans are playing very statically. The assault grenadiers are going to be able to get a flank on this rifleman blob, but the rifleman blob will be able to counterflank into these grenadiers that are kind of isolated, and the bazooka snipes from the captain might actually spell the doom of this one squad, but the American forces are being focused on other targets. The Ostend is coming in to assist, which would definitely turn the tide of the battle in the favor of the Germans, and it actually might result in the mine being exploded. No, the Ostend was out of range. If the Ostend was in range of this American blob that was retreating over the mine, that would have been really bad. We do have a time-on-target artillery barrage being called in on the mine, pretty much. The German units will wisely be able to retreat because, well, the time-on-target takes forever to come down, so it was a pretty poor choice to use all of his munitions on that call-in instead of getting some extra LMGs on his riflemen. Sorry for the cough. So yeah, that is a bit of a waste of munitions, but at the same time it does blow out the mine, so instead of being 180 munitions, it is 180 munitions minus 50, which is the cost of the mine. So 130 munitions plus the surprise of the mine to avoid being chased by an Ostwind that was already kind of late in the chase, and there was already an AT gun. So that was a bit of a waste of munitions. The conclusion is that. American recon run being called in from the Major. Major was upgraded, so perhaps some Jacksons will be making their appearance. I would go for a Sherman before going for a Jackson at this point, just because you know that the opponent used some of his fuel on an anti-infantry tank, so we're not going to have the heaviest of vehicles too soon in the game. And it looks like the S-minefield on the right side fuel was positioned, and it did wipe a rifleman squad, so that was an excellent usage of mines. It was only one of the zero squads, so not too great a loss for the Americans, but again, excellent usage of mines out of Angry German, who's definitely been spending his munitions better than the Americans. So we do have another wipe from the Assault Grenadiers, who are up to 20 kills on the veteran rifleman squad with LMGs. That was actually the most vetted squad the Americans had to offer. So far we've been having lots of wipes for Dom Pipon because he's not been paying too much attention to his units, which is a very big mistake. And if he doesn't pay attention, he might lose this squad too. This rifleman squad is slightly protected by this ridge from the fire of the Austrian, but the Austrian is coming around to do some heavy damage. The assault grenadiers are going to get possibly wiped by the riflemen over here. They're being kind of body blocked on the retreat, so they will die. And the other rifleman squad over here will get wiped, so it looks like Don Pippon is actually kind of slipping. Possibly had some issues with his machine, but I doubt it. It's just a micro mishap of the late game. Really, really bad. He does have the resources to rebuild the squads, but the veterancy, well, he doesn't have the resources to upgrade the squads anymore after he wasted all of his munitions on that artillery strike. But yeah, other than that, he won't really regain the veterancy anytime soon, because at this point, Germans have their infantry superiority again, which is really, really bad for the Americans. The Pioneer Squad might go down from the Captain. The Captain is also in kind of danger, kind of a little danger because of the Austrian, and the Captain being a little bunched up. The Austrian is showing its rear armor though, which is really, really bad, especially with this Jackson approaching. The Germans do know that the Jackson is approaching because it passed nearby these Grenadier squads, which didn't actually Panzerfaust the Jackson, which is a bit of a mistake. But the Grenadiers have their eyes set on another target, which is this M1 57mm AT gun, and it will go down. We do have a tower mine being exploded by the Jackson, destroying the engine. The crew should actually be jumping out and attempting to repair as quickly as possible. The S-mine field on the left did cause casualties on the Captain. It does mean that this assault grenadier squad is a very big threat, but it doesn't actually decide to chase the Captain, which is a very big mistake because it would have been able to wipe it if it had chased. The pack, the American pack, was stolen by some grenadiers who are retreating to the base safely. We have more assault grenadiers. I don't understand. Why would you build more assault grenadiers at this point in the game instead of getting another grenadier squad and upgrading it with your excess munitions, or getting just even another MG would be better than assault grenadiers. You need long range. This is crossing in the woods. You don't, you're Germans. Your strength is already long range, and this is crossing in the woods, a long range map. So you can't afford to let the Americans get the long range advantage on engagements, because this just allows these green rifleman squads that have no vet to be still relevant in the game after all these minutes. If instead there were vetted free grenadier squads running around with LMGs, these just vet zero rifleman squads would be pretty much cannon fodder against them. Or even if there were just free MG42s on the field, these vet zero rifleman squads would not be able to do much against them, except, well, try to smoke spam, but that would drain the munition supply of the Americans and just thus prevent the Americans from upgrading more LMGs on their units. So the Jackson is not on prioritized vehicles because of the crew jumping out and coming back in, which is a bit of a problem for it, so it should be reprioritized on the vehicles. The riflemen are attempting a push, and they managed to wipe a vet-free grenadier squad and managed to capture the LMG-42. Excellent, excellent tidings for the Americans, because that was the main firepower, anti-infantry firepower of the Germans, except of course the Austrian. But the Austrian is being kept in check by the Jackson, kind of, in a kind of weird way, because honestly the Jackson hasn't been doing too much, but just the presence of it is enough so that the Austrian is being very, very careful with any of its moves, which is probably a wise decision. But we do have to think of the fact that Angry German is only 30 fuel away from the Tiger and only 300 manpower away, so in about a minute he will be able to call in the Tiger. We have a light artillery barrage being called in on the Captain over here. And this is actually a terrible mistake, because not only it will miss the Captain because it wasn't called down too well on where the Captain was, and also because of the fact that the Captain can just simply move away, which he isn't doing, but he kind of did. And also because he called it down on his own S-mine field. So that means that not only he wasted the 120 munitions of the barrage, he also wasted most of the 60 munitions of the S-mine field. I would say about 80% of that. So about 160 munitions were wasted in that. 160 munitions that could have gone into free LMGs for his Grenadiers or free Teller mines. Again, some of these choices are very puzzling, honestly. But I still call it for the Germans right now because of the fact that the Tiger will definitely be a really good tool if you can use it correctly, especially with the Jackson. Oh, we have a Panther being built. I don't agree. I would have gone for the Tiger because the Jackson can only defend against the Tiger, and if the Americans are trying to push up, especially with the fact that the one AT gun that the Americans had was retaken by the Germans, if the Americans try to push up against the Germans, then the Tiger and the Austin will bleed them dry. So what right now Angry German should have done is gone for the Tiger and just capture 2 of the points and 1 of the fuel points and just sat on it. Just sat on it for the rest of the game because he has shaved off half of the VPs of the Americans. So if he can't afford to just defend 2 points for another 15 minutes with the Tiger and the Austin and the AT gun and all of his stuff, and just bleed the Americans dry as they try to recapture them in the open terrain of crossing in the woods. So that would be just a foolproof plan that would just avoid the worst. But instead he does decide to go for the Panther, which means that he will be forced into a more aggressive stance because the Panther isn't too great against infantry, so he will not be able to bleed the Americans as much. He will be forced to use the Panther aggressively to try and deal with the Jackson. But that is a bit of a problem because there will be another Jackson coming on the field fairly soon. If ft.Pineapple decide to go for that choice, which it doesn't look like he might do it because he's had the fuel for another Jackson for a while and he hasn't built one. So perhaps he's just waiting for his option. He will call in a Priest. Now the Priest would be a good choice if his opponent was OKW, but right now Angry German is not playing too defensively, so in my opinion the Priest won't be too great of a choice, but we will see how it performs. Right now he's basically relying on his Jackson for AT, and if the Tiger had been called in on the field, at this point it would be game over, because there would be 1 Jackson and 1 Captain against a Tiger and an Ostwind. That is not enough. If you've played any games of Company of Heroes, you will know that for certainty. So the Jackson is starting to make its first engagement with the Panther. A bit of a parting shot from both parties as they run away. Completely indecisive first engagement because again they're kind of again, fuck me for not. Okay, I've forgotten to get myself offline from Steam. So we do have the triple cap from the Americans. Again, the only reason this is even possible is because Angry German didn't go for that Tiger. Why would he not? I just don't understand. So we do have the major recon. That's weird. Increased duration of the recon flight. Oh, I didn't know. So apparently at Bed 1, the major does get an increased recon, which is always interesting to know. Again, the Americans have complete map control at this point. They have both of the fuel points, all 3 of the victory points. There's some delayed fuse rounds being used on the middle VP, just as a, I'm guessing as a preemptive measure, just in case the Germans try to cap the center. I wonder if these do any damage to vehicles. They probably stun them. I'm not sure. I mean, if you have to be an idiot to get hit by those, but I don't know. And they also have a very, very large scatter area, which is always really, really bad for an expensive ability such as this one. White Phosphorus on the Motor Half-Track is actually pretty decent, the White Phosphorus barrage, because it's pretty much pinpoint accurate and does a shitload of damage because of course it's White Phosphorus and it slows down units a lot. So the Germans do manage to capture the right side VP and dent the middle VP. The Grenadiers that were capturing the middle VP have been forced away by the Mortar Half-Track, which is now at 10 kills, so in later stages of the game it's starting to make its presence known, which is usually the opposite. So the Priest is firing on the German vehicle concentration in the center. These two should actually be retreating because there's really no reason to just stay in here and eat the Priest fire. The Priest won't be following your tanks. when they're being shot. It just will continue firing over here and be pretty inaccurate. So the priest is able to wipe the pioneers and also deal heavy damage to the Panther. At the same time, the American infantry blob was able to wipe out a grenadier squad. And the Panther is almost dead, so the Jackson can now easily push up, deal with the Ostwind. The AT gun is not being used on prioritized vehicles, which is a terrible mistake because it's shooting at the infantry and not at the Jackson, which is actually even out of range, which means that you should move up the AT gun a little bit. We do have the incendiary armor piercing rounds being used on the machine gun to deal some extra damage to the infantry horde, which does work, but at the same time, the Jackson does strike a bit of a revenge kill on the Ostwind, which is definitely really bad loss for the Germans because they needed that extra firepower against the heavy infantry force of the Americans. So really, what right now the Germans need to do is wait, S60 extra fuel, get the Tiger, get a few Pioneer squads. Possibly 2 or 3 Pioneer squads would be important because he really needs to repair his Panther, and if he will get the Tiger, he will definitely need to repair that too. And just play defensively, harass, pretty much do guerrilla, harass on opposite ends of the map with his Grenadiers, and just wait for the Tiger and the Panther to be up and ready to go, and then make a big push. Because he's been forced into that by his refusal to get the Tiger, and his just horrible misplay in the center here. Again, he was we've been having a bit of a weird game because both players do know what they're doing. They definitely know what they're doing with their units. They know what to buy. Well, maybe not Angry German with the Assault Grenadiers, but they generally know what to buy. They have pretty decent unit preservation for most of the game, but they just have these moments where they fuck up and they lose everything. Like this engagement over here and earlier on when the Americans lost about 90% of their infantry. I'm not quite sure what is up with that. Like every player can have those moments, but when both players are having them alternatively at opposite, points of the game, you start to worry. Because at this point the game is kind of hard to predict because the Americans are in complete advantage. They just have the Germans on the edge. They completely choking life out of them, and they could be easily pushing up and capturing some more points, which he is trying to do because he is pushing up with his riflemen, managing to wipe out the Vet-free mortar, almost wiping out a assault grenadier. Should actually retreat this rifleman squad, which is being bombarded by something. And again, almost wiping yet another assault grenadier. So really good pushes out of the Americans, but what's gonna tell me that he doesn't make a big fuck up in some way? With a Stug E. Why would he get a Stug E? I mean, of course, his thinking is, I need to deal with the infantry. But my thinking is, I am almost at the Tiger. I have the fuel for the Tiger. I just need to get some more Pioneers to repair my Tiger and my Panther. So, why would I not get a Tiger? And finish off my unit composition in a, with a heavy tank, which I might need to deal heavy damage to the big infantry hordes. Whereas now he's going to get a Stug E, which is a very fragile vehicle. While it is very effective against infantry, it's very fragile. So especially when there's Jacksons on the field, it's not going to be too useful. So Stug E will start firing on these riflemen, likely. But there's 2 Jacksons, so the 2 Jacksons can actually one-shot Stug E without too much trouble. They aren't stopping to fire, which means that they will be very inaccurate, but they do both land excellent shots. So Eagle Eye crew on both of these Jacksons, excellent shots. Take out the Stug E. That is exactly what I was talking about, and that is a waste of 200 manpower and 75 fuel. Now the fuel isn't too much of an issue. It is kind of an issue. You have another infantry squad dying for the Germans. I don't exactly know where. Another American infantry squad dying actually on the left side, possibly. If it survived, that would have been really lucky. And again, munitions being wasted on the timer target. There's a vet 1 rifleman squad and a vet 2 rifleman squad that might need upgrading, and another more rifleman squads that need upgrading with LMGs. Why would you not do that? Instead, you're gonna waste 180 munitions on time on target barrage on a target that can move away just as easily. So we do have a grenade almost wiping the assault grenadiers, retreating just in time out of that. The VP situation has been almost evened out. We do have a 70 gap, which compared to the 250 VP gap that was already... We have another Stuggy! Why? Why would you... So we do have the Stuggy being called in, rally pointed to the left, where it's going to get eaten by the Jacksons. Eaten alive, pretty much. So I'm not sure what kind of cruel blood god he's trying to appease, but it's not working. At the same time, we do have another very big misplay. A rifleman squad on the right side. No, actually the captain, the vet-free captain, was caught out by the MG42 and a vet-free grenadier squad and wiped. Again, the point I was trying to make, these guys are making very big blunders because they're tilting. Again, the late stages of the game, don't tilt in those because, of course, you have more things to micromanage, yes, but just keep an eye out on your things on the top left. Be calm. Just think before you do anything, which is always very important. And you will not lose quite as many units, because right now this losing of units is just because of tilt. You lose 1 unit and then you tilt and you just over micro 1 or 2 other units. And then you waste your munitions on artillery barrages that you don't need. Because again, what advantage do you gain out of this using this artillery barrage? You know that the enemy is gonna dodge it. You have seen the enemy dodge it multiple times. This is only gonna get, you know, a few of the enemy units to just move a little bit for a few seconds, and then they're gonna retake the point anyway. So once the artillery barrage is over, so I really don't see the point of this. Whereas if you had conserved the munitions, you would be able to, I don't know, use more grenades, upgrade more units, place more mines. More pioneers are definitely important, not just because of the repair, also because of the mine placing abilities. Right now, the Americans do have complete control of the map again, after their bit of a blunder on the right side with the captain. But I don't know for how long, because he might just do some crazy fuck up, and I really don't want to call this as much as I would call for the Allies at this point, because they have a completely superior force. They have doubled the pop cap. We have a Brum Bear being built from Angry German, which might work in a situation where there weren't 2 Jacksons on the enemy team, and you weren't just so close to getting the Tiger. The only reason I would see someone going for a mechanized assault on crossing in the woods is the Tiger, because the Tiger is an excellent unit on this map because of its pretty decent mobility for a heavy tank, and also its excellent long-range capabilities on its gun. So I don't see why you wouldn't go for Tiger, which is pretty much the prime unit you have for winning the game on this map. I don't see this. So we do have the Brum Bear. It might have a bit of a moment of glory here because there's no Jackson supporting this assault, which is a pretty big mistake. I don't see why you wouldn't bring up your Jacksons along with your infantry when you're making a harassment push, which is, yes, a harassment push, but when the enemy is being pushed so hard into the base, you might as well just consider it a normal push. We do have, again, time on target artillery being called in. Don't really see why. Like, what's it going to accomplish? Definitely the trigger discipline, let's call it that. The trigger discipline of these 2 players on their artillery barrages has been pretty poor. And we do have a Pioneer squad going down on the right side because Angry German was focused on microing on the left side. Jacksons do make their appearance, shooting at the Brum Bear. The Brum Bear, while a pretty sturdy unit, won't really last too long against 2 Jacksons. The Panther is also making its appearance, which might save the Brum Bear. If the Brum Bear cared for retreating, I don't see why it wouldn't retreat. If it would have just retreated, used the U key to run away, it would have survived. The Brum Bear dies to the Vet 2 Jackson. Vet 2 Jackson will be able to likely escape the Panther's wrath pretty easily, especially thanks to the fact that it's got a buddy. Now, right now, the fact that there's just Vet 2 Jackson means that the Americans can just use this first Jackson as a bit of a meat shield for the second veteran Jackson, while the veteran Jackson uses armor-piercing HVAP rounds to just pound on the Panther. And yeah, I do think at this point there's nothing the Germans can do to recover. As much as the Americans can fuck up, there's just no way. I mean, they could just send their own units into their own artillery. That could be a thing. And again, there's a vet-free rifleman squad not healed up, even though there's an ambulance at base, not being retreated. It does survive because of the fairly timely retreat. And let's see what this thing does. Nothing. the mortar half-track just does nothing. Again, like, look, it's hitting the assault grenadiers directly, and it's really not doing much. Again, just the auto fire and the white phosphorus are way superior ways to use that. The assault grenadiers are able to at least capture the VPs, which does stop the major VP lead, which is basically like getting gutted in the leg, where your main arteries are, because the triple cap was so damaging to the German just VP lead, from having 500 to 250 to 130 to 200. That is just so insane. The Jacksons are moving up, not even fully repaired, which is definitely a mistake, but we do have an excellent anti-tank rifle grenade, while the Jacksons flank the Panther, and with the damage engine, the Panther is completely doomed. A Panzerfaust is shot at the leading Jackson of the crew, but it is too little too late. The riflemen should actually be hopping in the Panther, honestly. The rifleman should actually just be hopping in a Panther, because, yes, a Panzerfaust might be able to destroy the Panther, but, I don't know. He might just, another thing he could have done is just drove up the Jacksons and dismounted both of his crews, because the crews do have, grease guns, so at close range they're actually fairly effective against infantry, so if they had been able to do that, then he could also have, used critical repair on the Panther in that engagement with one of the crews, then jumped the crews back into the Jacksons and retreated, and then jumped the riflemen into the Panther, which would have had a working engine by now, and just hopped back into the base and built a rear echelon squad or something to take over either one of the Jacksons or the Panther. So that would have definitely sealed the deal on the game for the Americans to have a Panther, but at this point, terrible mistake in a way, just leaving this Panther here. But of course, Angry German lost all his pioneers, so he cannot really capitalize upon this and regain his tank. On the left side, again, this is what I was talking about. Even these unupgraded riflemen, they have 44 kills because they've been fighting these crappy assault grenadiers, and yes, they are crappy at this point in the game. Just without even having upgrades, they can easily deal with them, especially once they are vetted. Yeah, pretty much they will be able to easily deal with them. Thanks also to the fact that the riflemen are a very good unit at close range, despite being riflemen, of course, because of the M1 Duran. So we do have the priest shooting at the base, at the retreat point of the Germans. We got another Stug E. Why would you get 3 Stug E's? Just think about this. He wasted 600 manpower, and 75 times 3 is 210, 225 fuel, which is almost exact. It's 90% of a Tiger, pretty much, if you consider the no, actually it's even less, it's even more than 90%. It's 95% of the resource cost of the Tiger. So, if instead of these 3 Stug E's, he would have gotten a Tiger and some Pioneers to repair that Tiger, and again, that already, you know, the only reason the priest got 23 kills is because once the priest starts hitting your units, you can just retreat, like, either retreat or move out of the arc of the priest, especially when it's firing at close range. You won't really have too much of a spread on that shot, and then you can just avoid it, because it's not a railway artillery. It doesn't really have that much of a splash radius. So again, poor unit preservation out of the Americans. The 44 kill rifleman being sacrificed to throw an anti-tank rifle grenade, or rather shoot an anti-tank rifle grenade at the Stuggy. It should have actually just been retreated at once. It might have still died, but at least it would have had a chance to escape, so there's that. The captain was rebuilt, which is an excellent choice from Don Pippon, because, again, especially the captain, but the lieutenant as well. They are very useful not only because of their veterancy bonuses, but also because of their weapons that they get for free. So once you lose your officers as the Stupidity dies, and also the vet-free assault grenadiers get wiped, yeah, once you lose those officers as the Americans, you can just spend the manpower to replace them. As you can see, it's only 320 manpower to replace the captain, instead of just having to spend the fuel as well, which is a mistake I did when I was new to the game. I thought that you would have to respend the fuel. Respend is not a word, but just spend the fuel all over again to to get the captain again, but you don't. So you can just what the fuck? You can just regain this unit for just manpower, and when you have all this manpower, which thumb.Pineapple does, having that officer is always really useful to round out your composition when you're closing the pop cap, because they do cost a fair bit of pop cap, but not too much. I mean, it's only one more than a rifleman squad, and considering that you already have 4 rifleman squads, that extra captain would really hurt too much. The officers are definitely a strength that the American faction have that many people underestimate, which can be used to your advantage. And again, the Americans are pushing up, completely cutting off the German fuel pump, but again, considering the Germans did waste all their fuel on Stug E's, they have another Stug E, the 4th Stug E. I'm struggling to keep calm, because just seeing all these Stug E's being hurt, this is not like, okay, 5 patches ago this would have been good, because before the Stug E was nerfed, it was an insane killing machine. So you did see actually people just getting like 4 Stug E's and then going for a Tiger or something. But again, Angry German built tier 4 and tier 3 and then got a million Stug E's. Again, he did have the ability to build other units other than the Stug E. And he could have had the Tiger. Again, I don't see why you would do this. And definitely a mistake for the Americans is just leaving all these vehicles here. Just, if there had been Pioneers being built at this point, the Panther would be up again already. Though I don't think it would be doing much, perhaps, but again, it would be a start for the Germans. We have a fuel cache being built, which is a bit late for the Germans, though it was built earlier, because right now there are no Pioneers, so I'm not quite sure when it was built. Fuel caches, especially at points like these are a good idea, though perhaps this point would have been a better choice because it is a cutoff point, so just to prevent its capture, a cache is pretty decent. Again, in these long games, caches can work out in your favor, especially thumb.Pineapple's munitions cache over here has been helping him gain all these munitions to waste on his artillery barrages. The Priest again firing at the base, dealing some damage to the HQ at this point only because there are no units there. And actually at this point, what's funny is the Priest could probably beat the entire German army like fighting because of the 50 cal that it's got. And because there are no AT units for the Germans. And again, assault grenadiers, no, just no. Yeah, I pretty much think that it's over. You definitely heard way too many things of my opinion of this game. I probably lost about the respect of 17 different people because of my insults, but, you know, other than that, that's pretty much it. Angry German does recapture the Stuggy with his Grenadiers, but they are going to die a horrible death from the anti-tank rifle grenade. So just as a quick recap, in case you have been missing the last 50 minutes of this cast, what the Germans could have done differently is way less Stuggies, less Brombears, less teching. Even if he would have gone for the teching, he could have gone for the Panther and then getting a Tiger instead of all the Stuggies, so he would have had a Panther and a Tiger. Instead of getting the Panther, he could have gotten the Tiger in the first place, and instead of getting the Panther and using all of that fuel on the teching and the extra fuel of the Panther, he could have gotten a Panzer IV to bridge the gap to the Tiger. He could have gotten way less assault grenadiers and more Grenadiers with LMGs if he would have wasted less munitions on his light artillery barrages. Excellent mind play. I will give him that. That was really, really good on him. Pretty reckless unit preservation, but again, that's just from experience that you will learn that, so that's no problem. Other than that, really, one mechanized assault group could have worked out very well for him in the early game because the Americans didn't have any AT for a long time. So that half-track is really, really good for protecting whatever unit goes in there. So an Panzer Grenadier that comes in with the mechanized assault group would have been able to just wreak havoc with the American units. Pretty much it. What could the Americans have done differently? Well, unit preservation for one was really, really bad. Okay, I didn't know that could happen. So the Pineapple nuke destroys the Panther, and Angry German surrenders. So, okay, again, Americans, what could they have done differently? More rifleman mines from the rifleman field defenses. They didn't really use too many of them. Less wasting of munitions on artillery as well. And just converting more of that munitions into LMGs and mines. Perhaps an early Sherman that could have worked out for him. The more half-track did work out for him in the long run, but in the early game it was a bit of a waste of resources because, well, it delayed his teching by a lot. If he wouldn't have gone that, he probably could have gone for a Stuart at some point and tried to use that as a bit of a counterbalance to the Ostwind and gain some map control with it. Possibly usage of more AT guns and pack howitzers instead of all these riflemen. And yeah, again, more unit preservation with the riflemen. The Priest did work out, so I won't really disagree with that. The two Jacksons worked out, of course, really, really well. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you all enjoyed this cast. Thank you for watching, and well, I hope you learned something. There was definitely lots to learn from this game. And yeah, I hope we'll see you soon.